living in, we are competing in, we are repeating in, we are believing in. It's time for us to shift our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Captain Future Show. I'm Michael Sillion, Captain Future, and I'm here to talk about anything future tonight. We have started our Best for the World broadcast today, and we just had a session on SDGs, me and Stellan. And now I'm going to take over for the night session. I'm going to see how long I can stay awake and talk to you, my fellow listeners. And if you're interested in watching it live, if you want to have a comment or something, I don't have a Zoom call, but if you want something, I have my messenger in my pocket, so message me for any questions if you really want to comment on anything live, but you're probably going to watch this another day. So I'm Captain Future. This is the 4th year I do Captain Future Show during Best for the World, and I've been doing this regularly before that as well, but the Captain Future Show is just me talking about the future with guests or with myself. The first year I did almost 5-hour session talking with myself and guests on Zoom and things like that, but tonight no guests. Tomorrow night I will do rig for guests on Zoom and things like that, but tonight is just me talking. And of course, get to the point. Stop talking about talking. Captain Future. What's happening in my life? I will go into that directly. This December, I did a presentation of our future navigation framework that's been very updated. And it's been like a lot of hard meditation and thinking on my part, and discussion with all kinds of friends, and of course a lot with talking with Bertola as well. What is an event-driven learning universe and an event-driven learning society, and that comes back to what I've been missing. I do this because I've been missing a framework that explains the whole human endeavor and the whole human society and all society and all life on Earth and the whole universe in itself. What is the universe and what is that? So I have a talk on that. It's on this YouTube channel, but if you're curious, you can search for Future Navigation by Captain Future on this YouTube channel, or DM me for a link. So that's what I've been up to for the last 3 years, working on that framework and explanation. And I won't talk about that exactly, but I will talk about the process itself and the thinking, because most of us have seen countless YouTube videos. We've been to conferences during the last 10 years. We read books. We listened to podcasts about explaining all things trivial and impactful about life and society. But also, and in that process, there was something missing. What is society? And my take on society is how we humans organize collective value creation. We humans, we can no longer live by our own. We don't make most of the things we use on a daily or yearly basis. We have not made on our own. I haven't made my iPhone. I haven't made my cap. I haven't farmed and produced all the food I eat. Someone else has made that for me, and that's how we do it. We make stuff for each other. And why do we do that? Well, because there's a lot of benefit in that. Once we become expert on something niche or small, we can become more efficient and more well read or well trained. We have all the skills and all the insight how to do one thing and do it in scale as well. And that's what the industrial society did for us. We can make all things in scale. So there's a lot of surplus, abundance, a lot of value. More value than we consume in a lifetime is available to us. And we see that in the stuff. You can see behind me here, of course. There's a lot of stuff, mostly books here, but you get the point. In your home, there's probably stuff. And some people have said, I have to get rid of all the stuff, then I'm totally free. But you're still in society. You're not free from stuff any less than anyone else is. You still wear clothes and you still use your iPhone and you still eat food, and just doing that less doesn't make you free in any sense. So that's I'm totally against this minimalist thing. Just use some part. I actually save all. I haven't thrown away almost anything of my stuff for many years, because I know it will come. Maybe it's a time soon where we don't throw stuff away anymore. We have to reuse and remix and rehash and go into a makerspace and use what you already had to make new stuff, because the production of new stuff is not sustainable at all. So we have to make do what we have, and that's why I keep my stuff. I tell myself, I rationalize that, because that's why you hoard stuff, because it will become useful someday. And in most of our lives, it's never been true, but I think it's gonna become true because of the way we have produced too much stuff that we don't need, and then we have to take the stuff we don't need and make things we need with them, or something like that. We will see. But if you agree or disagree with my rant, please let me know. And see if you're a minimalist guy or a minimalist girl yourself. Please let me know what that's like, and if you truly only use things you have done yourself, like you made your own spear, you hunt your own meat, and you cook it on your fire you made yourself in the forest, and you make your own clothes and boots and everything. Let me know if that's you, or else just succumb to the idea that we produce stuff for each other. But in this process, we also do a lot of unwanted stuff. There's a lot of spillover effects, external effects, and there's a lot of what some people call waste, that products that end up where no one wants them, and they're supposed to go back in the circle, but we have no idea how that works, because nobody is expert on the circle itself. There's people now that are starting working on becoming circular expert or sustainable expert, that figure out how can we make everything fit back in the circle of life, the circle of the biosphere, and things like that. But in this model, that's what I'm focusing on. What is society in this process of creating value for each other? And there are 4 aspects of this that I'm very, very curious about. It's like the things we create and produce from scratch. But we also take a lot of stuff others can make, and this is an overlapping process. But we take a lot of stuff. You never start with the raw material in most cases. You take a product some other person have done, and you mix it together and make another goods or service with it. But we also consume a lot of, because what is the point else if we don't use the thing we have produced? We use a lot, and that's okay. Consuming and using is not the problem in a consumer society. The problem is if we waste value or even destroy value. That means poison things, burn it up, turn it into toxic chemicals that will stay in nature forever. The ever chemicals, or what they call ever something. That's a real problem, because other stuff we can figure out how to put back, but the things that we can't put back or in there forever chemicals like that, or forever poison toxic seas that won't ever host a living fish stock again, things like that, in a million years, and that's enough time span for us to call it forever. But so that's the real conversation we have to have in today's society. What do I do on a daily basis in the aspect of creating remixing, consuming, and destroying value. We all do it. And everyone who doesn't destroy value is a liar. At least the way I see it. But that's the thing we have to do. And value in itself, it doesn't have to be like a physical thing, like burning up a carrot or smashing something into a million pieces. It can be social things as well. So we people are, of course, many of the products or services we use today, we produce social value, and we produce social, and we consume social value, and we destroy social value. We say we tear on the fabric of human health, societal health, and social health by destroying relationships, by destroying mental health and things like that. That's a real problem. That's the thing we've been talking about today in a project called Mindshift. How do we go from a society where we produce a lot of social destruction and turn that into mental health? That mental, so we go from like this illness of society and turn it into a well-being of society, social and mental well-being. And that's a conversation because it's hard to measure, and since it's hard to measure, we don't measure it and we don't use it. In that sense that we can't put it directly in an Excel sheet and see, or a spreadsheet and see the numbers. And since then we can't measure it, and then since then it's a secondary effect and it's someone else's problem. But today we can see the cascading effect of mental illness everywhere, or just the stress of an ordinary work day where we can't put it all together, and we end up eating sugar or fat in the evening to comfort ourselves from a stressful day that weren't supposed to be stressful at all. All of cascade effect and spillover effects of us not living in a harmonious way. And it starts young. It starts in school. And if you're really interested what's really behind this, there's a very cool series called Trolls Under the Ridge, dealing with the intersubjective parasite by Evan McMullen from last October, where he talks about this on a societal level. What is the effect that has been make us human do bad stuff to ourselves and bad stuff to other humans for hundreds of generations, for thousands of years, and it's like a social societal trauma that we inherit from our forefathers and parents, and then we give on to our children. And how do we stop this bad cycle of bad behavior? We can see it everywhere, and of course it's very prominent for us in the Western world with the conflict between the West and Russia in Ukraine. It's not just Ukraine. This is a conflict between East and West, and it's all ends up in doing hurtful stuff with each other, and people being hurt continue this bad cycle of like shooting, killing each other, destroying valuable infrastructure in Ukraine, and just doing bad stuff. And the only one who's gained us this is the people who's suddenly received double or triple their orders of munition in the old munition factories over the world. They're like woohoo, laughing all the way to the bank because suddenly they have new orders of munitions for everywhere in the world. And like it doesn't take a genius to figure out who benefits on this and who keeps this destructive cycle going. That what we call the egregore, or the intersubjective parasite of bad behavior. And it's just not like on that. It's like on family scale, a lot of social tragedy in what we call the nucleus family, where parents treat their spouses and children badly, and that cycles continue. The trauma and the sin goes on to the next generation in an endless cycle. And can we break this cycle? That's an interesting question. So listen to that series if you're interested in this. I have a lot of thought about this social value in society. We all need a hug. We all need companionship. We all need togetherness and belonging. And we all need understanding. And we have to understand people who have different views and different perspectives. And we can all learn from each other if we're willing to. We can instead of spewing bad words on social media or even on the streets today. You can see what's going on in France, like people doing peaceful demonstration during days, and then the bad apples show up during night, turn it into a violent scene of throwing stuff at each other, like monkeys, throwing feces at the others. We have to stop this monkey behavior and become human, civilized human, I think. So it's everywhere, and like that's what I'm trying to do, like figure out how do we talk about what society is on a level that you don't see anywhere in mainstream media, on the news, or in most stories and narratives. We hide it behind layers and layers of other human behavior, but we don't go to the core of human behavior and what I would call the human endeavor. What is it that I tried to divide it up in 12 groups. I was in 2019. I did a talk about that, but I have evolved that much since then. How do we make sense of all human behavior? What's going on? What motivates it? What's behind it? What does it lead to? And things like that. From all perspectives, like behavioral science, on a cultural perspective, on work, salary, employment perspective, on a relationship perspective, and all perspectives on human, all the things that goes on in the human society. Why does it happen? How does it happen? And how do we think about what happened? And things like that. So that's things I'm fairly interested to talk a lot more about. This is like the great sum up of the Captain Future journey so far. And in that essence, of course, a very personal matter. I will go into that now. I've spent the last 4 years, in the summer of 2019, I lost custody of my 2 fantastic daughters, and I haven't seen them since, because I have the full right to see my children. I have what we call oreglerat umgänge. This is a non-regulated together time with my daughters. But because it's non-regulated, there's no one regulating it, and there's no schedule, and no one has to fulfill it. So when my ex doesn't work for me seeing my daughters, no one else does. And that's been the tragedy of my last 3 years. I've totally broken down, and I've seen the bad side of myself and society. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't pay my bills. I could do nothing for months. And still, some days I woke up out of bed and spent time with my friends and posted on social media and pretended that nothing. It was so shameful for me, so I pretended nothing of this was real. I couldn't ask for help or anything because there's so much stigma and trauma around this. And I felt totally left alone in this. So this has been my process of coming back from that. And that's why during this process, of course, it will be ever more important to me to think about human behavior and how can someone like my ex and then institutions like the social service and the court in my old hometown Varberg do so much bad stuff to me and not feel sorry or not even think about how bad I treated me and my daughters in this process. So that's the driving force behind me now. How can we talk about why is this happening? How much of this is the egregore, and how much this is on a conscious level, or how much of this is in a cultural level that we can't even see? And how do we begin to see that then and talk about it and ask questions and make it visible and put it in the sunlight, not in the nightshade where it's so much of our institutional bad behavior and our human relation behavior hides today away from the sunlight. So that's part of me. And what else is part of me? I still, before COVID, I used to do clubbing and dancing a lot, but that went away for 2 years. And finally, last summer, I went to the first official club. So 2.5 years without clubbing and dancing in that celebration. That last summer, I went to Almedalen and I clubbed every night, and I was back in myself in this celebration of life. And that comes down to what I will call, wait for it, keepers of the fire. What is it in human behavior that changes after dark? From a hunter-gatherer perspective, when the sun went down, we didn't go out and gather nuts or hunt animals in the night mostly. If it wasn't for hunting specific things that only turned up during night. But most of the time we spent together by the campfire. Somehow dancing, talking, lying, laughing, hugging, wrestling, and all the other stuff. And we didn't do most of this during the day, so something happens when us and after dark. It's in our DNA. We call it the campfire mentality. And since we invented fire, we know that we have for at least over 100,000 years, maybe longer, maybe 150,000 years, or even longer than that, we had fire. But the earliest things we know in some caves, I think it's somewhere in South Africa, there's a cave with at least 110,000 year old leavings of fire. So we know we had fire by then. But we also figured, we probably know that for many years, we didn't know how to make fire. We found fire from a forest fire, started by lightning most probably, and we kept the fire alive. And if the fire died, we died. We needed the fire because we had become dependent on cooking and the warmth and the light of fire during the night. So one of the most important role in the hunter-gatherer society was someone who kept the fire alive, keepers of the fire. They could not ever fall asleep on their post. They have to stay awake. Maybe they did it in shift, or some people took the whole night. Like, you go to sleep until dawn, and I keep the fire alive. And when dawn comes, I go to sleep because I kept the fire. I kept the fire alive. So now you can take over the day keepers of the fire and the night keepers of the fire. But keepers of the fire was probably a really important role back then. So, and we're doing it for so long, and this is in our DNA. And that's what I find out. I am this person. When I did my military service, I was 22 years old in 1994. I found out that I was the oldest guy in my platoon. And I found out when we slept in the tent during the night or even in the logement that I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't even go to bed before everyone else was put to bed. And that was something I chose. I just found out that every night for 10 months I was the last man standing in the tent or in the barracks. And I didn't think about it then, but thinking back now, I think that there was some driving force inside of me that made me stay up, awake, and keep the fire alive. I was the keeper of the fire. And this is something we don't talk about in today's perspective, where everyone is supposed to be a day person. Everyone is supposed to go up early, do 1 hour of running, then 1 hour of yoga or meditation, even before breakfast. And then you go on and become very productive member of society. And then you go to bed at 8 o'clock. But that's not me. And I guess there's a lot of more of you that don't feel like that's not me either. Why the frack am I supposed to do it that way when I feel most alive after midnight? Like now, I'm here doing the night shift. I'm the keeper of the fire in this broadcast. Because suddenly I was really tired before, but now my brain is spinning up like 100 thoughts bouncing back and forth. They wasn't there this morning when I woke up, or even this afternoon. But now they're there, jumping around inside my brain, keeping the night person of me alive. And I am that keeper of the fire, the night person, who likes all the things that some people would call decadent or just pleasure: dancing, raving, watching TV series, playing games, all the things that is just pleasure in some cases, or whatever you want to call it, during the night, evening and nighttime. And since we had the first cities, this of course was very prominent because there's a lot of people doing that, and it's easy to look down on these people, but they had this genetic inert drive to do this? And how do we, instead of looking down on people like that, how do we channel that in today's society? How do we make people like me a productive member of society during the night hours? For me, it's like thinking, writing, talking, like I do now, and things like that. Just not watching Netflix or playing online games or things like that I do some nights, but some nights I watch YouTube, interesting lectures, I write thoughts, I talk to some friends in the US who's still awake during the night hours and things like that. And so that's what I'm thinking about. Instead of looking down on people, how do we channel that into something positive, a value creation for society? And because there's a lot of us, the keepers of the fire, and we don't. The problem is we don't even have the conversation on the level. I've searched all my life for someone like me having this conversation about the value of keepers of the fires, but nowhere. It's not. It's still Sippo. Am I the only one who has these thoughts, or are there more of you out there? Please let me know. How can we even start a conversation around this? It's the first step, and how do we even then make it progress and make something valuable about it, and the insights and the learning that can be done during the night hours? I'm supposed to switch cameras here as well. I have my own studio in front of me. I know some of you can see it if you have the picture. And here you can see. Here's my studio on an iPad. Yeah, playing around during the night. I get playful. I get silly. I get funny. I get creative. I get productive. And joyful and things like that. And how do I channel that, and how do we channel that, and things like that. So yeah, let's keep us off the fire. Next subject. Another thing I've been thinking a lot about is like wisdom, of course. That comes back to this. And I hadn't heard much, but during the last 3 years I've also spent countless hours on podcast and YouTube lectures and hearing people an online Zoom conference talking about wisdom. And we did the most amazing thing during COVID. In April, May, June 2020, we started an online exercise that we call the Glassbead Games. And the very definition of this is that it's a kind of wisdom gym. How do you train the skills of wisdom? And wisdom is a multi-complex collection of skills that you put together. So wisdom is something like your muscles. You have to train it. Like the brain, you train your cognitive skills in the brain, and you train your muscle skills in the gym. But you also have to train this more multi-complex skill that we call wisdom. And it's not something you learn or read in a book. It's a process. You have to actually put in the work and go to the gym to get buff, wisdom buff. And Glassbead Games is one of these exercises that you can go to become wisdom buff. It gives you perspective. It gives you abilities like listening and cognitive flow and things like that. It's an amazing exercise, and we will do it tomorrow night, I guess, if you're interested. Saturday night around this time slot here on Best for the World. We'll do a Glassbead game if you want to do it. So that's what we're going to do. But the exercise is very simple. You divide yourself up in small breakout groups in Zoom, or if you're in the physical world, you sit around the sofa or table. You're 2, 3, 4, or 5, or even sometimes 6 people. But preferable 3 or 4 is the best, we found out. Groups of 3 or 4. And you take turns talking about the subject. So the first rule is divide into groups and choose a turn order. Then you use a timer where you talk about around 1 minute each, and you go around from 3, 4, or 5, sometimes even 6. But we usually 5 rounds is the best. So if you're 3 people, 5 rounds, this is 15 minutes, 1 minute each, and you take turn talking. And when it's your turn, the rule number 2, you refrain from using personal pronouns like I did as, me, when I was, and when you were young, and when you and I did that, and things like that. You talk about things that happened, or what what is the process of. You talk in a third person sense about everything, and even if it is a personal experience, something you know, you reframe it in a third person sense. It takes some exercise and practice, but and most people get it wrong. Even I get it wrong sometimes, and you don't get stuck on that. You just continue on and try to do it like this way. For some reason, it just worked. That's the one. Number 2 important rule. And number 3 rule is when it's not your turn to talk, you listen actively. You use a notebook and write things down. They have some really good quotes and sentences coming out from this exercise during the last 3 years that I couldn't have made up in any other way. So when it's not your turn, you listen actively and you write down, he said that sentence. And then when it's your turn to speak, you read that sentence back to yourself and you start talking from there. So you listen actively and don't think about what you're going to say on your turn. So even if you see a sentence or something you want to talk about, you don't go into that. You don't zone out on that. You continue to listen. And it's a practice, but you learn it. Even I have a very easy time to zone out during a normal conversation. But I've practiced this skill of not zoning out during a Glassbit games, and I actually listen to what people are going to say. And when it's my turn to speak, I don't have I have no notion of what I'm going to say. I just riff, improv. It's like improv or wisdom, or like riffing or whatever. It just comes to you, and that's why it's such a fantastic exercise. So this is one exercise that we could call a wisdom gym, and there are others, but this is the best I've done so far. It gives you perspective, it gives you sense making, it gives you meaning making around words or concept. But that's not the end. After you've done a 15-minute round, you usually sit around to talk about for 20 or 40 or even sometimes 2 hours afterwards. And so most of the time we do a second round after 40 minutes, so it's 2 hours, and then after that round we do another 40 minutes of just free group talking. If you're fairly, like, you meet together like from 10 to 20 people. If you're more than that, you break into rooms of 20 to 20 people. So you don't get together 150 people after that. You break it up into larger breakout rooms where you can discuss and listen to what others talked about. And then, in most cases, without any facilitation, a group conversation where everyone listens and give everybody space to talk appears. Because of the first exercise, this naturally occurs. Sometimes there is a person who can't do that and talks a lot, and then you have to. Then there's always one magister ludo or moderator or facilitator that can facilitate the talk and says, "Now, Michael, you have talked enough. Let Sarah talk instead," and things like that. So that's how we do it, and you're welcome to join us. Maybe we do every Sunday, 9 o'clock Swedish time. That's 3 in the afternoon Eastern time, noon Pacific time, 8 p.m. UK time. So figure that out. But it's always 8 o'clock UK time. That is the central part. So this Sunday, everyone will be on summer time again. So on this Sunday, it will be 8 o'clock UK time, 9 o'clock Swedish time. We do it on Zoom. Reach out for me for the Zoom link. It's the same every week, and you will experience this exercise. And wisdom, yeah. There's a fantastic, I've listened to a lot of talk about this, but there's one in particular from John Vervaeke. He'd usually use a lot of heavy words and babble, but when he talked to people not in our circle, like on a conference in Prague from September last year, he actually made the most sense ever in a conversation about democracy and wisdom. So I will link that to you if you want to worry. But wisdom is a multi-complex skill that we have too little on. We have what he would call the wisdom famine or wisdom fatigue in our society. We don't even talk about it. And I will make the most interesting part is I'll make this analogy. If you think that we have a national team in ice hockey or national team in football or even a national team in badminton or whatever sport, horseback riding, whatever you're interested in, you have a team. Even like in individual sports like car racing on rally and stuff like that, you have a team with you. And when your team goes into a competition or a practice or an event, you expect them to do their best. You expect your national team in hockey who done some serious training. They're at the best peak performance at this event itself. They're well rested and things like that, and they're gonna do the absolute humanly best to perform in this when they're representing your city or your country or something like that. And you expect them to be in a training camps, and they have coaches and every support panel, or like people rigging your car, whatever it is. There's a whole team of people who do their absolute best to perform at this event that's before them. But then it makes sense that we have a team representing our nation in wisdom, or a city in wisdom, and that's supposed to be a leadership, our political leadership in this essence. So our political leaders are our wisdom team, and they're supposed to be the absolute best in wisdom in our nations. And you can see where I'm going with this. Like, not the case. Our wisdom teams, we're like even lucky if they even know what wisdom means, or even know what the words is. And that's not the case, true in most cases even. So our wisdom teams have not been to a wisdom camp for 2 months before doing important legislative or important political work. They have not been to a wisdom camp where they train their wisdom skills. And that's so sad. And that is sad in itself. But if our hockey team showed up and just stood there on the ice, did nothing, just picked up a hamburger and a beer and sat down on the ice and started eating a hamburger and drink beer, we'd be outrageous. But when our wisdom team shows up and do something that is far removed from acting like a wisdomful leader, we just let them get away with it. So we don't put any pressure or expectation around our leadership to be the absolute elite in wisdom, if you know what I'm sensing. And why is that? When I frame it like this, it becomes obvious. Our leaders should be our elite wisdom practicer. They should have many years of complex thinking, and many years of complex perspective making, and many years of complex sense making, and many years of having insights in whatever field they're supposed to lead us in. Or if they're like the big leaders, they have many experts behind them who they're just not expert, but because expert can have a specific knowledge on an area, but they don't have the wisdom skill of giving a perspective how it fits together with everything else. This is what Nora Bateson called warm data. It's not just a specific field. That everything is connected in today's society, and that's what I'm going to talk about. I have a book called, I won't show it here because it's on the other table outside. It's called The Seventh Sense, and the Seventh Sense is what Joshua Cooper calls to understand the interconnectedness of all things. Everything in here in the biosphere, every living organism, everything, weather, living process cycle, and everything in society today is connected. And it's even more true now than since we invented the internet, and our connectivity went through the roof. So the number of connections you can make through the internet in that essence is insane when you think about it. People living 100 years ago, they couldn't even imagine the amount of information, stories, and media we take part in creating, consuming, and narrating every day. So everything is connected in that sense, and that's why we call it a connective society. And we have to figure this out, because wisdom comes from figuring out how everything is connected. Perspective, connectivity, all the social relationships, all the physical relationships, all the narrative and cultural relationships between things, how it's all connected, and what happens when you put even more connection into it, even more when we speed it up, like we've seen during the last 20 years on the internet. every conversation and every knowledge piece, everything is on there, and we produce so much narrative and stories and culture and science reports and knowledge and books and YouTube videos and Facebook posts and podcasts that was unthinkable. Like, even before that, we had books and newspapers and magazines, and no one read them all. But even now, we have taken that to 11. And how do you make sense? How do you navigate that world? At least in the beginning of the internet, if there was a meme, everyone on the internet knew about this meme. But now there's so many memes and stories and things like that, and you meet the person you have never met before, and you have to start comparing. Where did they come from? What memes do they know? What stories? What movies have they watched? What books have they read? How do their mindset go? How do they think? How do they behave? How does it all fit together in a one multi complex helix cultural model? And that's where we are today. And now we got AI and ChatGPT and OpenAI and things like that. Another stir in the pot that stirred things up and speeded up the connection rate and how things change and how things work. And we're ill prepared. We don't have the wisdom and the perspective to do this. But that's where I want to go. How do we become more ready for this world? How do we become what we call, I will talk about this tomorrow, the role of the navigator and weaver. Me and Sten are going to have a conversation on this. A new type of role in society that we need to make sense of a story filled with so many cultural, narrative, physical and behavioral patterns and artifacts. How do we make sense of that? How do we navigate that? How do we... It's insane. Like, even before, if you ask someone, have you read all books? That was crazy. But today, when you ask someone, have you seen everything on YouTube? It becomes even more crazy because the production rate is greater. Even if you spend your days 24/7 consuming what's put on YouTube, you couldn't keep up because there's so much more put there. Maybe a long time ago, if you read books 24/7, you can read all the books or most of the important books, but that's not true anymore. Even that. So even if you do something 24/7, you can't keep up. And then how do we expect people to even do this as a small part-time of the job, even when there's no one doing it 24/7? And that's what I've been doing. That's part of my job as Captain Future, a future navigator and a weaver, and Bertola as well, keeping up and keeping sense 24/7. And even it's so much more than a full-time job. But then at least we should have someone doing it full-time job, and that's not the case either. And we should have a global network of people doing this, millions of people all over the world doing this together. That's my vision, and at least give it a try. We can't just surrender it all to AI. We have to we can't become numb like you've seen WALL-E, the movies. We just sit in our chairs and get everything served to us. We know nothing and do nothing because we just given up. We can't give up. You have to make sense of ourselves and the world. We can't read and take it all in, but we at least have to try. And we have to have someone who has, like, even a small percentage knows something about the world. And especially our leaders, they're coming back to the wisdom. What I can hear from people, meeting people, I meet some local politicians in my hometown, they have no idea how the world works. Zippo. They don't know how money works. They don't know how society works. They think it's about budgets and money. And that's of course managing complex systems with complicated tools. If you go back to Cynefin and using complicated tools to manage complex systems. And we can see all of unwanted cascade effects of this happening in society. We ask ourselves, why does this happen? And why does that happen? And things like that. So, and we have to at least try to make sense of, so there are not so many things we don't know about, and things like something like that. So, And that's what we're going to talk about. What is this identity and role becoming a weaver and navigator? We will touch upon that tomorrow at least, something like that. Whew, what else? Yeah. What should we talk about? Yeah, something completely different. Let's talk about making sense of cultural narratives. I'm a big fan of great TV series, movies, and stories. Mostly TV series lately because they're so much better than the movies. The last good movie was a long time ago. Maybe Everything Everywhere All at Once was one of the cases. But before that, it's been two of my favorite movies is Wind River and and Cloud Atlas and things like that. Very few movies in the last decade, but at least a decent amount of TV series. And my favorite from last year, of course, Star Wars Andor, that finally made sense of the Star Wars universe. It's not a fan service, illogical place anymore. It's actually a place that makes sense. If you're gonna spend time in something, it has to make sense. And Andor finally made sense of the Star Wars universe. They used narratives and relatable real person and behavior to explain what's happening, not magical thinking and crazy town thinking. And before that, it was my favorite from the last year. Before that was, of course, Arcane, the League of Legends animated TV series by the Foucault Studio from France. Amazing, also on Netflix. Andor is not on Netflix, it's on Disney. And I'm currently enjoying Picard Season 2. I didn't watch that last year because I didn't have access to it, but this year I have access. So I'm currently watching Picard Season 2, and I'm very soon gonna finish with that so I can jump into Season 3. And I love Picard Season 2. It's about finally the final arc of Jean-Luc Picard and what Star Trek is really about, humans. It's about us. And what Logan, the last movie of Wolverine, Logan, didn't give us. So many people celebrated that movie, but I think it totally betrayed everything Charles Xavier and X-Men stood for. X-Men stood for a society where we included everyone, and that movie just gave up on that dream and just quit and said that it didn't work. Fuck you all. Let's all die in a world where it didn't work. That's not the legacy of the X-Men and Charles Xavier. The whole idea behind X-Men and Charles Xavier was a world where we tried to make it work, and that's what we're doing now, and not give us a vision where we all gave up. Sorry, what's the point then? Are we supposed to learn from that story and just give up? What the hell? No. We have to at least try, and we have to have the inspiration of people actually not seeing their life's work become ashes. Because if that's the message and the narrative, why the hell are we doing anything? Yeah. So that's what I think. At least they're trying to give Jean-Luc Picard a final narrative to give us. To stand up, to be the good guy, and to try, and to stand, and to do it, to create, to live for something, to die for something. Yeah, I can talk a lot about more narratives and TV series and stuff like that, but I think I'm done there as well. So this has been a very interesting conversation with you all, and I'm feeling a bit tired, and I'm gonna leave you with it there. There's so much more I can talk about, but not tonight. So goodbye everyone, see you tomorrow.
We are creating the world we're now living in. repeating it. We are believing in. It's time for us to shift our mind from best in the world to best for the world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. It creates a new world to mind a shift, intentionality, perceptuality, conceptuality. We are choosing to shift our mind to best for the world, best for our world. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional. Make decisions intentional, to take decisions intentional, making decisions intentional.